I would like to start this session with two questions. The first question is, how do companies become great innovators? And the second question is, who are the best innovative companies in the world today? Well, this bootcamp session will focus on innovation. And according to the Boston Consulting Group, or we call them BCG, innovation is a top 3 priority for almost 80% of companies today. And as a matter of fact, the Boston Consulting Group have carried out research, or one of the longest research studies on this topic, and they've been ranking companies around the world on innovation since the year 2005. And during every year of those innovation studies, innovation was ranked by 1,500 managers as one of the top 3 priorities in their company. So what this finding tells us is that maybe innovation is worth considering during this boot camp. But this also raises another interesting question. What is innovation? Well, innovation can mean many different things to many different people. And in this session, we will agree on a common definition. But to begin with, we should first understand and remember that innovation is not the same as invention. Now, if you Google the word invention, you might get a definition like this. Invention is the action of inventing something new, typically a process or device or a creative ability. And the key thing to pay attention to here is that the definition says something was created. But does this mean that the invention was of use to anybody? It does not. And the reason for that is because invention is just a thing. But innovation, on the other hand, introduces the concept of the use of an idea or method. So use is very important. In other words, an innovation is an invention that causes changes in behavior or interactions because it has some use. Now, Professor Clayton Christensen at the Harvard Business School is one of the leading experts in the world on innovation, and he has identified 3 forms of innovation which we should briefly introduce in the beginning, because this will help us all to understand what innovation is. Now, Professor Christensen says that the first form of innovation is disruptive innovation. And disruptive innovation often contains common off-the-shelf components that are easily available, but they're put together in a different way that is simpler to existing approaches or solutions, and used for solving the same problems as existing approaches, but they provide a more attractive solution to those problems. And disruptive innovations also often have less features, which means they're simpler, or attributes, as we say in business language. And one important point to remember is that disruptive innovations often do not provide what customers in established markets might be looking for. And what this means is that disruptive innovations are not usually targeted at established markets in the beginning. They're targeted at emerging markets or new markets. And by saying emerging, Professor Christensen is not referring to developing countries or whatever. He's saying, in fact, disruptive innovations are targeted at markets or customers that are more remote and unimportant for companies than their existing markets. They might be even customers that they've been ignoring in the past because they're not attractive enough to serve. And remember this point, it's important. So one could say that the main benefit of disruptive innovations is they make products or services more affordable and accessible to a larger base of customers who have not been served earlier by companies. And the great thing about disruptive innovation is that it creates growth in the business, industry, market, and jobs. But disruptive innovation needs a lot of financial capital or money to grow, and it needs that for success because it consumes a lot of money during the concept development, testing, marketing, and getting customers to accept new ways of doing things. But please remember, disruptive innovations make products or services more affordable and accessible to a larger base of customers who haven't been served before. And they create growth and jobs. The second form of innovation identified by Professor Christensen at Harvard was sustaining innovation. And sustaining innovations don't create new markets, but help develop existing markets. They do that by providing better value in the marketplace. And they provide better value because they encourage existing companies or competitors on a market to compete against each other in making sustaining improvements, little improvements. And they do that because sustaining innovations are focused on making existing products and services better, but sustaining innovations positively impact a company's profit margins and market share. Unfortunately, though, sustaining innovations don't create net growth on the market, and this is because they're simply improving existing solutions for existing customers, but they create cash. And finally, according to Professor Christensen, there is the third form of innovation, which he calls efficiency innovations. And efficiency innovations reduce costs of making and distributing existing products and services. And efficiency innovations almost always reduce the number of jobs in an industry. And they do that because efficiency innovations allow the same amount of work to be done or more by using fewer people or resources. Now you might be thinking efficiency innovations are not good for economies, but as a matter of fact, although they eliminate jobs, they also increase a company's free cash flow, which can be a good thing. It can be a good thing because increased free cash flow means that the cash made available should flow back into developments of disruptive innovations, at least in theory. Now, free cash flow might be a new term for you in this session, but rather than discuss that now, we'll introduce free cash flow in the bootcamp finance and accounting sessions later on. So don't worry, but you know it's cash. And the important thing to remember at this point is that invention is not the same as innovation, and that there are three forms of innovation, and those three forms are disruptive, sustaining, and efficiency. And finally, each of those three forms of innovation have their benefits, and more importantly, when these three forms of innovation are functioning properly on a marketplace, they support the development of each other.